What the devil does. How the right, who claim to be Christian, do what the devil does, in spinning false narratives and twisting truths. In modern America, the loudest voices on the right often speak with the cadence of preachers, quoting scripture, calling for morality, and invoking the name of God to justify their culture wars. Yet, when their rhetoric is examined closely, it mirrors something far older and darker than the gospel they claim to protect. It echoes what Scripture itself warns against: the work of deception, division, and distortion. In other words, what the devil does. For years now, the conservative movement, particularly its Christian nationalist wing, has been waging a war not only on policy, but on perception. Words once born of truth and liberation have been hijacked, twisted, and weaponized. The term woke, for instance, originally came from the Black community as a call to awareness, to stay awake to injustice, to systemic racism, to the trickery of power. But in the mouths of today's right-wing pundits, woke has become a slur, shorthand for everything they dislike or refuse to understand. That is the devil's trick. Take something meant for enlightenment and twist it into something to be feared. And it doesn't stop there. The term black fatigue, coined by diversity expert Mary Frances Winters, originally described the exhaustion that comes from navigating racism day after day. It was never a slogan, never a political tool. It was a truth spoken from lived experience. Yet conservatives, eager to discredit conversations on racial justice, began co-opting and distorting the phrase, turning it into mockery, or using it to imply that white discomfort is somehow equivalent. It's a familiar pattern, one seen throughout history. Whether it was Jesus' teachings on compassion being turned into justification for conquest or liberation, theology being demonized as Marxism, the powerful have always found ways to cloak deception in righteousness. What's particularly striking about the current right is how openly it engages in the very behavior the Bible condemns. The spreading of false narratives about elections, immigrants, and woke culture echoes the serpent's whisper in Eden, a half-truth spoken with conviction, meant to sow doubt and fear. They condemn cancel culture, even as they call for book bans and fire teachers for teaching truth. They rail against moral decay, even as they excuse cruelty, lies, and greed when it comes from their own. If the devil's greatest trick was convincing the world he doesn't exist, then the right's greatest success has been convincing millions that deception done in the name of God is somehow holy. True faith, no matter the denomination, calls for honesty, empathy, and humility. But what we see from the far-right Christian movement is none of these. What we see is propaganda baptized in Scripture, politics disguised as piety, and fear sold as virtue. And that, quite plainly, is what the devil does. This has been a No Sleeple Network production. Thank you for watching. If you like what we're doing here, please like, share, and subscribe.